Let's go into the personal injury marketing calendar, and you always want a marketing calendar. If you do not have it written down, it will not get done. And one of the things you definitely do not want to do is just go through, not have a marketing calendar, and then you're going along. You will be sidetracked. Somebody else will do an advertisement, and then you'll go, okay, let me shoot over here, and then let me go over here, and let me go over here. Next thing you know, you're just going in circles. So what you want to do is know what works best, what works least, what costs most, what costs least. Look at all the you need to know the marketing and how it works relative to the return on investment, the cost, the time, the labor, the knowledge, the skill. So you look at all these categories because you cannot do them all. You cannot. We all have limited time and money. And some doctors are better at some areas, and some doctors aren't. To be honest with you, some doctors, as an example, just shy away from educational sales. To them, it's too confrontational. Well, if that's the case, then you better learn advertising. You better learn organic marketing and advertising, if that's the case. So you need to, and if you're well-rounded, then you want to pick the things that work the best. So you want to pay attention to your skill level, your ability, the cost, the labor, the time, and you want to take what works best out of all the different systems. That's the best way to do it. But again, not all doctors are willing to do what it takes to do marketing. As an example, doing a presentation. Some doctors will never do a presentation. It doesn't matter what. Or shoot a video. Some doctors will never shoot a video. So that part of the marketing equation is gone. So you do have to look at yourself and go in reality and go, am I willing to do it or not? And to be honest with you, a lot of it has to do with, well, just look at your past. If you haven't in the past, chances are you're not going to in the future. That's kind of what I'll say. So it takes a real awakening of the doctor, because there are skill level differences. There are knowledge level differences. There are confrontational differences. That'll matter in what marketing you want. And so the very first thing in marketing is understand your strengths and weaknesses and what you're willing and not willing to do. That's number one. But let's say I have a doctor that has no issues, no confrontation issues, is willing to learn, he's willing to, have the skill and all that. Well, those are the doctors that always will do what's most effective. And those are the doctors that always do the best. That's just the way it is. And because they're controlling their destiny with the marketing, they're not being dependent on advertising. And we'll go into what all this means, because remember, when we talk about marketing, we're really talking about three categories. We're talking about publicity, advertising, and educational sales. And you remember, only 8% of the market's looking for a chiropractor. And so publicity works fine for those people because it affects the category of trust. So remember the formula, the core formula for marketing after a target market is need equals money times time divided by trust. That's where you're going to get business. How well you can control those levers, target market, establish need, minimize the obstacles of money, time, and affect trust. That's what's going to determine your success. Those are all the levers you've got to control with marketing. Okay. So there's the publicity that works the least, and it only works for people who are looking for a chiropractor. Advertising works better because it will handle the obstacles of time or money and trust. So it'll work better. But again, it only works for people who are looking for a chiropractor. And remember, most patients, potential chiropractic patients, are not looking for a chiropractor. Remember that. Only 8% are looking for a chiropractor. Out of the 92%, 75% of those people have a gateway problem, a chiropractic problem, a gateway problem: back pain, neck pain, joint pain, old injuries, arthritis. Okay. So we know that. So the huge potential is in the people not looking for a chiropractor. Now that gets to be real important when you're going to go into your marketing calendar now, because you can't use advertising to get those people. They're not looking for you. You have to use educational sales, and that's a whole nother world of marketing now. That takes knowledge and skill. You don't really have to know much about anything to do advertising. You can hire an advertising agency, depending on how much they know, they'll do your advertising. But you have to know everything when it comes to educational sales, where there's the big market, where there's the massive amount of patients. Now, remember, this is a personal injury marketing calendar we're going to talk about. So I'm only going to focus on personal injury. That's it. Okay. Personal injury patients. That's it. Okay. We'll look at all the different marketing programs, but some of them are not going to apply to personal injury. So let's just pay attention to the personal injury. And then you want a marketing calendar. You want to put it in place. You want to train it. In other words, you want it to be a system. What is a system? And why do you want it to be a system? Because it's better to have a few regular new patients regularly than a large amount at once, because you'll lose them. And hopefully you understand that by now, that it's always better to have a few regular patients coming in. In other words, it's always good to have several marketing systems that's periodically and regularly creating new patients. That's the best, that you're not overwhelmed. You'll be able to process them. You'll be able to keep them, that kind of thing. If you do a marketing event and you just happen to get a lot of new patients, you'll find out you'll lose a lot of those patients. And that's the office, by the way, that's going up and down. Very unstable office. So you create a lot of stability when you have these systems in place, when you've trained them. And again, what's a system? It takes a specific person, specifically responsible, who's specifically trained of when to do it, where to do it, why to do it, how to do it, and it's quantified. So then you can measure and go, does the person need a bonus? Or do they need more training? It's not going well, they need more training. Or maybe they just can't do it after 3 times going through something, they just can't do it. Some people just can't do stuff. So we'll give them an opportunity 3 times. And then after they can't even do it over 3 times, you got to move on. They got to be relocated or moved out or something. Okay, so having said that, let's go through the personal injury marketing calendar. Let's go into what works best and least. And I'll just tell you right now, we already know what works gangbusters. We already know what doesn't work well. And then we also know what doesn't work well, but gives a big return on investment because it doesn't cost much. See? So we're going to pay a lot of attention to the return on investment, definitely. But also we're going to be paying attention to the volume, the amount and the volume. So let's go ahead into these parameters. Let's go through the categories. And then you should pick which ones. What are you going to put on your marketing calendar? And you stick to it. You train for it, and you stick to it. That's what you do. And you measure it. And then you adapt accordingly. If it's going well, do more. If it needs some minor tweaks, or maybe, it can't even get done. You've tried it. There's, you can't, the training, whether it's the doctor or the staff or whatever, and for whatever reason, after multiple training, it just doesn't work. Can't do it. Okay. All right. So let's go into those categories. But the bottom line, and it's like inversely proportional. The more knowledge and skill it takes, the greater the opportunity, the less the cost. These are very good generalizations when it comes to marketing. The greater the knowledge or skill, the greater the return and the more effective and the less the cost. And a classic example of that is at the top of the food chain for personal injury is educational sales for attorneys and medical doctors. Well, that takes knowledge, it takes skill, And it takes some confrontation. You can't be afraid. There's a lot of doctors who are timid and afraid to talk to attorneys. So that's on one end. And then you go to the other end, you go, okay, what generally is easy cost, and it's not very effective and doesn't take much skill or knowledge. And there's the dichotomy. And it really gets down to the doctor and how much he's willing to do. Is he willing to learn? Is he willing to increase his skill or knowledge base to increase the effectiveness of his marketing? Or if he's not, he's stuck. Once you're not willing to do that, now you're stuck with publicity and advertising. You're dealing with cold call patients, bad patient, the worst kind of patient, no trust, highest dollar amount, cost money, lowest return, lowest profit, highest overhead. That's what you're dealing with. And so one of the big statistics we'll pay attention to from a marketing standpoint, there's several we'll put in. Well, one of them is percentage. What's the percentage of proactive patients? How many of them did you create? And that number should be over 50%. Over 50%. If it's not, you're going to have a problem. And it should be as close to 70, 75% as possible. In other words, the doctor and his knowledge and skill knows how to create business. When you can do that, you're not dependent on the whims of advertising. And because there's only one guarantee with advertising. You're guaranteed that it's eventually not going to work. That's the only guarantee. So I always ran my businesses based on knowledge and skill, which is the highest, greatest, most effective marketing. And then I did a little bit of advertising, but I always looked at advertising as the cream on the cake. The cake was the educational sales, because that I can control. I can turn it off. I can turn it on. I want to get more new patients. I can do it like that. I want to create more personal injury attorney referrals. I can do it like that. If you don't have the knowledge or skill, you can't do that. You're stuck with advertising and what it will or won't do. And the bottom line is you'll never grow abundance through advertising. If that's all it took, all you had to do was spend money to make $1 million a year, everybody would be doing it. Everybody. And that's not what happens. And I'll give you one simple example, and then we'll move forward with the calendar. There's one type of advertising called discount advertising, direct mail. You may have seen it, like Valpak or something like that. And that can cost like $600 to go to 10,000 people. Well, you pay $600, goes to 10, and typically you may only get 2 patients out of that, maybe 3. That's it. They're cold call patients, discount, and they're typically cash. That's why they're buying discount. In other words, it's the hardest patient there is. The discount cash cold call patient. That's the hardest there is. And so if the doctor is not good at patient education, that doctor may only keep them for 1 or 2 visits. He may not even make, and he probably will not even make the $600 back, versus a doctor who's well-trained, has knowledge and skill, and he knows how to keep all 3 of those patients for, say, 30 visits. And he knows he's got a 50 to 70% referral rate. So from the very same piece of advertising, this is how big of a dichotomy and a difference it will make, matching knowledge and skill with advertising, or just knowledge and skill alone with no advertising, or advertising alone with no knowledge or skill. So you take those 3 patients, and let's say they stick around for 4 visits, they feel better, and it's $50 per visit. So that's what, 200, 246. So in that case, it's break even, and you've lost labor and time. So it's worthless. That was worthless. That was a throwaway. And the same doctor that knows how to keep those 3 patients and get a 50% referral rate now gets at least 1 more new patient. And if he knows how to keep them, say, for 30 visits at a $50 per visit, that's $1,500 a case average. 15, 15, 15 is 4,500 plus the referral that he got, $6,000. So the doctor who had knowledge and skill did that advertising and created $6,000. He spent $600 and made $6,000. The doctor who did not have the knowledge or skill, in this case, patient retention, education, and referrals, didn't have the knowledge or skill, spent $600 and lost time or money, and he can't do it again. And I can't tell you how many times that happened over and over and over where I was at. And I doubled down. I got 3 new patients. I know I was going to get them to prepay, and I was going to get another 1 to 2. So every time I spent $600, I knew I was going to make $6,000 to $10,000 because of knowledge and skill. And the next doctor down the street that never learned the knowledge or skill lost them after 3 or 4 visits. Wasn't worth it. He didn't do it again. And then that just repeats itself all over the practice. That's the difference it makes when you understand and have knowledge and skill in marketing versus when you don't. Because the knowledge and skill is in the educational sales. And again, you don't have to know anything about marketing. You can just pay somebody to do your advertising. Now you got the worst patients. You're not in control of it. And they're the most difficult to deal with. They're the highest cost, lowest return, highest overhead. So you want to do everything you can to move away from that, get away from it, and only look at that as do a little bit, because I'm gonna share with you some basic advertising that I definitely do recommend. But how we look at it is that is not the bulk of the business. If it is, you're in trouble. If your business is less than 50% proactive referrals, you're not in control of your business. If you are, you're going to be in control. In other words, you're going to be able to create business at will. And that's what we do. So anyway, let's move forward. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a screen share here and get this thing up. Let's go through all the categories and some basic guidelines of the marketing calendar. First, you want to do it every 2 weeks. You want a marketing event, like a major marketing event. Because remember, it's better to have periodic events that give off a few patients here and there than one event that you get a lot. So a few regular patients, new patients is always better than an infrequent lot. What does that mean? It means you have to have systems in place with regularity. You can't have regularity if you do not have the components of a system. And all doctors I talk to, especially when they first join me, I'll go into their marketing and I'll go, what marketing system do you do? And they typically have none, 0. They may do, a system is consistently, and they may do something every now and then or this or that, but that's it. There's no system in place. Okay, so what's the first thing you put on your calendar? The marketing events, you cannot change the date. So there might be something, and let me use the example that I just shared with you, that Valpak discount mailer, okay? That was fixed dates. So I had to put that in first, okay? So whatever your fixed dates are, that's what you put in your marketing calendar first, and then you work around those dates to add your other things. And there's some things you'll do regularly and consistently. Now, remember, I'm only going to talk about personal injury marketing. Now, with my consulting clients, we do all the marketing. It's not just personal injury. We get we get back pain patients, neck pain patients, all kinds of patients. But that's not what so you're going to see a lot of systems, but that doesn't mean it's a personal injury system. So we're going to emphasize the personal injury systems. And essentially what you're going to be looking at is it's either going to be publicity, advertising, or educational sales system. And then you've got to decide what you're going to do relative to time, money, skill, knowledge, labor. So here we go. Always put first place, the first 5 categories, the patient search. I'll go into that in just a second. Always document the source of new patients for return on investment. This just happened the other day. I was doing a practice analysis with a doctor, and he put in, I think it said online. and then it said referral. Didn't say where, who. So we don't know who to thank. We don't know who a VIP person was. Nothing. And then same with the advertising. We don't, it says online. Well, what online? There's several different kinds of online. And sometimes people go online, it's a referral, but they'll go online to get your phone number. Say, so you got to be specific for two reasons. You got to know the return on investment. How well is this working? Number one. And number two is who to thank. Because remember, you have to segment your market, your patient base. They are not all the same. And you got to stop looking at it like that. 3% of your patients will refer. Remember, it's Pareto's law. 3%, in other words, a small, very, very small percent of your patients will overwhelmingly give you more referrals than that percentage. And then the second highest percentage, and we kind of use these numbers to just kind of make it real. So 3% will give you up to 20 to 30% of your business. 17% can give you up to 50 to 60 to 70% of your business. And then 80% mix, little to nothing. And that's what you'll see. It's Pareto's law. You'll make 20% of your money or 80% of your money from 20% of your patients. You'll get 80% of your referrals from 20% of your patients. That's Pareto's principle. Okay. So you need to know this. So when we do marketing, I know I'm going to target my 3%ers and my 17%ers, especially my 3%ers. That's where the gold's going to be. Okay. So that's why we need to know the source. It's got to be in great detail, not generic. Always document the source. Always know your cost per patient, total marketing cost. What is your cost per patient? There's some numbers you just need to know. That's like if somebody says if they spend $20,000 on marketing. Well, it means nothing. What if they spend 20,000 and they make $1 million, say in the same time period? That's great. So what you spend on marketing is irrelevant. What's relevant is the return on the investment, which means you got to know some basic stats. Okay. So when we go to the marketing, always know your cost per patient. What is your cost per patient? And obviously you want to keep getting that lower and lower. You got a high cost per patient. That means you're spending a lot of money advertising, and you're probably not good at all in the educational sales referral category. And that's a bad number. So you're always working to get that number to be better, where it's more referrals, active referrals, patients you create that didn't cost any money or very little money. That decreases your cost per new patient. See? All right. So cost per patient. Take your total marketing cost divided by the total new patients over that period of time, the same period of time. And generally it's a minimum of 4 months, 6 months, something like that. But you should definitely have an annual. You could do quarterly, and then you should know your cost per patient. Okay. Cost per patient, total marketing cost divided by the total of patients. Okay. Return on investment. That's everything. Return on investment's everything. So you've got to know your return on investment. So what's the return? Subtract the marketing cost from your sales growth and divide it by the marketing cost. So there's the formula, ROI. How much did you grow? So you spent money on marketing. It grew this much, minus the average organic sales, minus what the average sales were, divided by the cost, marketing cost. So if your revenue is $2,000, the campaign is $200, then your return on investment's 900%. 2,000 growth minus the 200 divided by the average cost minus the marketing cost, 200, 900%. So what is considered a good return on investment? What's considered good? Well, in advertising, the average for advertising is 1%. 1% effectiveness is considered normal in advertising. 3% is considered good. When you advertise, and you get 3%, that's considered extremely good. Okay. Okay, so after the first 5 categories, next is the introduction and educational sales, and then there's a cold call. You need to be aware of these categories. First, where do the patients go? That's the first thing you want to look at. Go, when somebody's looking for a chiropractor, and in this case, we're going to say personal injury patient. When they're looking for a chiropractor, where do they go? Because that's where you want to be, okay? And they're already going there. So that's, some of the easiest patients you'll get, generally speaking. So we want to look at that first, okay? Okay, now, then we'll look at cold call advertising. That's the bad stuff. Unfortunately, that's the stuff most chiropractors are doing. And you want to get away from that. You want to do as little as possible. And you want to make your metrics as best as possible. And then we're going to go into introduction marketing. And that's the best. That takes the most knowledge and skill, creates the most business. It's the most effective. It's the most profitable. That's where the gold's at. That's what goes into the 92% of the people not looking for chiropractor and gets them. Whether it's a medical doctor for referrals that had no intentions on referring to you, and because you know educational sales, you were able to create referrals from him. Same with attorneys. They had no intention of referring to you. You do educational sales, boom, now they start referring to you. See, that cost very little to no money, but it took a lot of knowledge, took a lot of skill. It took confrontation. That's where the gold was compared to advertising, costing a lot of money, not very effective. Don't even know if it's going to work very well. You don't control anything with advertising. Educational sales, you control it all. Okay. And then you got, where do the patients go first? Then you got cold call advertising category. You got introductional sales category. And then you have, I'm going to make the internet its own category because that's a big category. And there's definitely a couple things you definitely should be doing on the internet, period, bar none. So let's go through all these categories and go, okay, how do we put them on the calendar? What should your marketing calendar look like? And everything about the office is trained in. The staff's trained into the calendar, the roles, the responsibilities, it's all trained in and it's all quantified. And so I get to the staff meeting and I'm looking at the metrics. People ask me all the time, they go, how the hell did you manage 77 offices in 20 states? I'm having a hard time just keeping up with mine. And the answer is management. It's called systems. You can't do it without systems. You can't go very far in your practice at all without systems. In other words, other people. You're very limited if you're just going to put everything on your back and you try to carry everything. You're going to have a very low practice and it's going to wear you out. It's going to wear you down. So you have to learn management. You got to learn systems. You got to have specific people, how to hire people, how to train them, how to manage them, and then quantify the system. So all these systems are moving, are without you. It didn't matter if I showed up at the office or not. My team was taught in all the marketing systems. They were taught who was to do what, where, when, and how. That was training, and I knew how to train. See? So it didn't matter if I was there or not. I was creating new patients, and my associate doctors were processing them. And then I could create as many as I want because I knew educational sales. Most of the people that need chiropractic are not even looking for a chiropractor. Okay, after the first 5 categories, next is the introduction. So let's go through some of these categories, okay? What are the 5 main marketing considerations? Cost. We'll pay attention to cost. Labor, time, skill, return on investment. So every time we think of a system, we're going to pay attention to these categories, okay? Because some of them have like little to no cost, and it may have intensive labor initially and then no labor at all, but it's still working for you, like a video. See? And then, so let's go through each of them. But these are the considerations: cost, labor, time, skill, return on investment. And when I talk about labor, I'm not just talking about the doctor's labor. I'm talking about staff member. How much is that gonna occupy that staff member? Because you're paying for that staff member. So I'm gonna pay attention to how much time they're gonna be occupied. And the other consideration is repeat. Do they have to do it again? See, that's time again, and it's labor again. Do they have to do it again next month? Well, what if it was a marketing system that didn't? In other words, it worked next month, but you didn't have to spend any time or labor or cost on it. See, this starts looking to be pretty attractive now. Okay, and obviously the goal is to maximize your return on investment, your minimize your costs, and you want to leverage labor and leverage time. And obviously you want to learn educational sales, because that's where all the business is. It is not chasing the 8%ers. Okay, so what is the greatest? So let's start going into these categories. So what's the greatest return on investment, period? It's an office sign. Now, let me say this before I get going on this. I'm not going to go into detail of every one of these marketing programs right now. I don't have the time. That's why we do these individually. That's why we'll do a webinar and cover one of them, like the sign. We just covered the sign a few weeks ago in a webinar. All the specifics of a sign: placement, size, color, what's the first, second, third priority, everything, what's most effective, all that. So we cover these individually. That's not what's going to happen right now. Right now, we're just going to point out the ones relative to this: cost, labor, time, skill, return on investment. That's what we're going to be paying attention to. Okay. All right. So we talked about the sign, office sign. Now, remember, we can make that personal injury specific. We can come out with a sign, that specifically targets auto accident patients. And we cover that separately. I'm not going into that right now. So we go, okay, well, what's this? How does that relate to the factors: cost, labor, time, return on investment? Real good. So you go, well, if we do the sign like we talked about, there is some cost, a little volume. It could be as little as $100, $200 a canvas sign. Labor, you wouldn't be doing much of it, if any at all. Somebody else will do the labor. Time, not much at all. Skill, not much at all. Return on investment. Well, the return on investment is going to be big. Why? Because you're going to spend money once, and you're going to be able to use that sign every day, every month, month after month, year after year. So you're not going to get a huge influx of PI patients from that personal injury sign, but for the return on investment, it's big. That's why the sign is the greatest return on investment. Your office sign, especially when it's done right, your office sign is the single greatest money you will spend on marketing and money you will get back, your sign. So we pay attention. So we pay attention to that personal injury sign. And by the way, we're not just talking about a sign out front. We're talking about on the windows, the door, the side of the building, all of this potential, marketing real estate. And we cover it separately. We go into great detail how to optimize the sign, the front, the door, the windows, the sign for these factors. Okay. So take that into consideration. So let's go to the first marketing categories. So where are patients presently looking? So you need to know this. When somebody's looking for a chiropractor, what do they typically do first, second, third, fourth, and fifth? Okay. Well, number one, they'll talk to their existing circle of influence. That's what we will do. We'll ask our friend or mother, father, hey, do you know of a good optometrist? Do you know of a dentist? Every industry, trust is always number one in every industry. So you take your patient base. They have a circle of influence of 7. 2% of your patient base and that circle of influence is in an auto accident every year. You can do the math. So you have the inside leverage, but not if you don't communicate with these people. So that's why we're real big into the video newsletter. That's to our existing patient base. And the message is always going to be auto accident related, personal injury related. Again, we cover that in great detail separately, how that works. Okay. And you go, okay, how does that fit? Well, it's the first place people are going. That's kind of important. And then you go 2% of your patient base. So don't expect them to come back to you if you're not even talking to them. You know, they're getting 7,000 messages a day from everybody else. Everybody else is trying to take your patient and you're not talking to them at all. You don't respond to them. You don't email them. You don't call them. You don't do anything, but you think they're going to come back to you. No, they're not. This is why we regularly communicate with our past patients. So 2% of them are in auto accidents every year. They have a circle of influence of 7. So you can go into all your past patients, multiply it times 7, multiply that times 2%, and you have a direct feed right in there, but you don't if you're not communicating with them. So that's why that's always number one. And we like doing the email with a video link, and we talk about that separately. Doesn't have to be a video, but video is always better. And we explain how and why and all that stuff when we cover these marketing things individually on how to do them. Okay, so that's one. So should that be in your marketing calendar? And by the way, I'm going to give you my recommendations as we go through this. And the answer is yes. Why? Because cost. How much does it cost to shoot a video and send an email? How much labor is involved? Little to nothing. How much time? Little to nothing. And you're leveraging it. It's not even one-to-one. Depending on how many patients you have, you may have 5,000, 10,000, I don't know. So you're leveraging. Think of this. That Valpak that I was telling you about, that only went to 10,000 homes. So you paid $600 one time for 10,000 pieces of advertisement. And it was mixed with 19 other businesses, or 20 coupons. Okay. Now, how many people are going in front of how many people are driving past on your street every day? Probably more than 10,000. And are you doing anything to capture their attention? Messaging, sign? See? Well, they're charging you $600 to get in front of 10 people. Well, you can probably get in front of 10,000 people pretty easy, even if you only had 2 or 3 or 4,000 people a day. Remember, 80% of the traffic is the same traffic every day. It's the same traffic every day. When they're not in an accident, it doesn't matter. But when they're in an accident, they've seen that sign hundreds of times now. That's what's high on the consciousness level. Okay, so patient video newsletter. Yeah, I'm going to do that for my existing patients and for their circle of influence. And it's going to be personal injury targeted because of cost, labor, time, skill, return on investment. Yes, I'm going to do it. That's going to be a system. It's going to be in the marketing calendar. Okay. Insurance video. What's the next thing patients will do? They will Google their insurance company, State Farm, to see if you're on a provider, even though it's not true, but they've been trained by major medical insurance. So the personal injury patients, they'll still Google their personal injury insurance, State Farm insurance, thinking that, there's a provider, even though it's not true. So are you in that void? Are you there? When they Google State Farm insurance for your location, are you there? Do you have a message to them for them to come in? Well, you could be 0 for 2 right now. So would I do insurance videos? So let's go back to cost. How much does it cost to shoot a video? 0. Labor. It is labor intense initially, but then it's good forever. I've got videos on the internet that I cut 10 years ago that are still working for me. So yes, it is a little labor intense. but then there's no labor involved. Time, yes, same thing. There's a little time involved to do it, but then there's no time involved. See, that's what, if you had to take the same labor every month and the same time every month, it wouldn't be worth it for the return. It wouldn't be worth it. Skill. You do have to know something about shooting a video. You can't make a crappy video. You got to know something about lighting and sound and positioning and what's your message. And of course, we cover that. I do webinars specifically on how to do that. So it doesn't take much, you know, like anything, once you learn, it's simple to learn. Once you learn it, it's like done. Return on investment. Well, you're going to get a big return on investment, not because you're going to get a lot of patients. You're going to get a huge return on investment because it didn't cost much. And it's going to be out there, kind of like a sign. It's going to be out there forever. So these are pathways that people come to an office. And you have to ask yourself, am I in those pathways? Now, it will depend on these factors, cost, labor, et cetera, okay? But I'm also realistic. But every insurance company, I'm going to have videos. When they Google that insurance company, you're going to see my video come up. That's what's going to happen. Google for business. That's not personal injury. That's not personal injury specific. That's patient specific. Condition keywords. Well, you can definitely do conditions, right, relative to personal injury. And you can definitely do personal injury words, auto injury, doctor, car injury, chiropractor. See, so you definitely should have videos with the personal injury keywords that are SEO'd with the right message. And again, we cover that. We have templates. We cover how to do it. That's real simple. So you go, how much does that cost? Nothing. It costs you a $99 webcam and a $10 light and a $14 lavalier microphone. That's it. And it's a one-time cost. So condition videos, am I going to do those? Definitely. I'm getting them done. And the great news is I'm done. I don't have to spend any more time, labor, anything. And they're just out there working for me. Am I going to get a lot of new business from that? No. Is it going to give me a big return on investment over time? Yes. Yes. So that's the measure of whether or not I'm going to do it or not. Right there. Cost, labor, time, skill, return on investment. And is it repeat? Is there a repeat cost? Is there repeat labor? No. Condition insurance videos, repeat cost? No. Repeat labor? No. See? So these are the reasons how I'm looking at this. And then, of course, the proactive side. I definitely want a message, a personal injury message, in front of that 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people that's going up and down your office, up and down your main road every day. I want to do whatever I need to do to make that happen. Because 2% of those people are in auto accidents every year. Are you going to get a ton of new patients from it? No. How much cost is involved? Very little. Labor, none. You're not going to do it. You're going to have the sign company make you a $150 canvas sign. Time, little to no time for you. Skill, not much skill involved. Return on investment's big because it's a one-time cost that works for you month after month, year after year. So is that going to be on my marketing calendar? Yes. And I'm going to be done with it. See, most of these, the video newsletters, that should be once a week. Insurance videos, I'll be done with it. Condition videos, I'll be done with it. Sign, I'll be done with it. 3 out of the 4 personal injury marketing, you're done with when you're done with it, and it keeps working for you. And that's where the patients are looking that have problems. So yes, I'm definitely putting that on my marketing calendar. And it's not even really a calendar. It's my marketing plan, because I just have to do it once. I don't have to do it every month. Okay, let's go to the next category. I'm going to hold off on the educational sales. Let's go to that next. let's do that last. Let's go to the cold call advertising. So what are some of the options with cold call advertising? Remember, you want to do as little as possible with advertising. If you're getting the majority or a high percentage of your business from advertising, that's a bad number. Remember, you should have over 50% minimum and pursuing 70% from what's called active passive referrals. In other words, business you know how to create, not just waiting around for the damn phone to ring. That's what advertising does. You're waiting around for the phone to ring. That's no way to take control of your life. Okay, and obviously all of these can get significantly better depending on how well you do them. So just because you do them doesn't mean they will or won't be. So you go to Google pay-per-click. So is that recommended? Yes. Why is it? There's one advertisement that's recommended that you pay for, period. There's actually two. And that's the keyword. So in other words, your personal injury keyword. So like auto injury chiropractor, car injury chiropractor, auto accident injury doctor, auto accident injury chiropractor. Those are like the keywords. Only those words. There's only like 6 or 9. That's it. Nothing else. I'm going to do pay-per-click. I'm going to buy those words. I'm going to bid up for them because if they're Googling car injury doctor location or auto accident injury chiropractor location, you got a 99% chance that's a personal injury patient. So what increases the effectiveness of that pay-per-click working? Well, number one, you only do it for those keywords, no variations at all, period. No misspellings, no other words. So if they only those words are your marketing doesn't come up. And remember, you don't pay for pay-per-click unless somebody clicks on it. So that's one of the things that significantly helps the return on investment pay-per-click is when you reel in the words. You don't just put all these words out there and variations of them. That's when you lose a lot of money, and that's when advertising is not worth it. So you got to be really tight and specific with the keyword. That's one major category thing. Number two is you always want an opt-in. So you want to send them, and a lot of times it's sending them to what's called a funnel. Because you don't want to just send them to your home website. They're gone. You can't follow up. And remember, where does most of the business occur? First contact, second contact, third contact, fourth contact, fifth contact. Where, in other words, if you took all these people, you did advertising, and you did all the follow-ups, okay? Where you get the majority of the business? 7th to 9th follow-up. So you don't even have a follow-up if you don't have a funnel and capture and then do follow-up educational sales content. So you significantly hurt your effectiveness of pay-per-click when you do not have a funnel. So those are two things that'll make the cost go out of control and not even make it worth it. And then, of course, the message, the message becomes very important. And then when they opt in, they go through a 3 to 4 series educational presentation that helps to establish need and overcome the obstacles. And then there's regular follow-up from there. See, that's the absolute most effective. Real tight keywords, opt in with the right message and the educational sales. And by the way, that's what the websites we're creating are coming out with. They're coming out with all of these funnels, these personal injury funnels. Because I'm aware most doctors don't know how to do it. And even when they hire an advertising agency, they don't know they may know how to do a funnel, but they won't even know they won't know the messaging. Okay, so that's definitely one you want to do. So if you're doing personal injury, you definitely want those 6 to 9 keywords. You definitely want the opt-in with the educational sales service. That's like it's like you're buying personal injury patients. That's essentially what you're doing. Okay. Then you go to billboard internet advertising. Well, what is that? Well, you've been to a website before where they like say you're looking at shoes, right? And then you leave that site, you go to a totally different site. And in an ad banner, you see the shoes that you were just looking at. That's called billboard. That's billboard internet advertising. That's definitely worth doing. It costs a lot less. And I'm talking about only for those 6 to 9 keywords, personal injury keywords. Because it costs a lot less and it does the so important follow-up. They see it again and again for a certain period of time. So that is the only two paid internet marketing that is totally suggested. But it's tight, tight, tight. Okay. And that's what makes it cost effective. Otherwise, you can lose a lot of money by not doing doing pay-per-click. Okay. All right. Yelp advertising. Now, one of the things, reviews are big. Google reviews, and of course, Yelp is the biggest business review. So you may want to consider do advertising on Yelp. Now, remember again, the effectiveness significantly goes down if you just send them to the homepage of your website. That's what you're doing. And I'll tell you, if you got an advertising company and that's what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. Because that's like throwing money away when you just send somebody to the homepage. Because remember, the vast majority of the business is in the follow-up. It's not the initial, here's my webpage. It's in the follow-up. And you can't follow up unless there's an opt-in, unless there's a funnel. See? So, same thing with Yelp advertising. It's recommended, but only if you for your location, chiropractor location reviews. Okay, only that, nothing else. In other words, that's where they're going. In other words, if somebody's looking for a review for a chiropractor in your city, that's a 99% chance it's a new patient that's looking. Again, you're buying a patient. So you want to consider doing that, but only for that keyword, chiropractor review, your location, and only if there's the opt-in for the follow-up. Otherwise, I wouldn't fool with it. Same with Facebook pay-per-click. Do people go to Facebook when they're looking for a doctor or an attorney or an optometrist? No. Okay. But what makes Facebook so intriguing for marketing purposes? Facebook is the only medium, and that includes TV, radio, everything. It's the only medium that allows for demographic, psychographic, geographic, psychographic barrier evaluation. In other words, all the target market categories plus follow-up with video. Facebook, pay-per-click. That's why. So it's not a place people go, but it has the greatest. And what I recommend is you do try it. But once again, there's very specific keywords that you want to use. And I'll just share with you, you can overcome, if you don't know much about demographics, psychographics, and geographics and all that stuff, what you do is you take your best patients. So you do your geographic radius of draw, eliminate the outer 20%, take that 80%, and use those patients' emails. And then when you go to fill out fill out Facebook or Google, you can upload those emails, and Google and Facebook will take the metrics of those people. In other words, remember, we've already qualified them as good patients based on the target market criteria. Okay. So that's how you can easily have real high criteria without knowing much about demographics, psychographics, geographics, all of those things with high precision. Because what you don't want, what I see all the time, I'll be on the internet and I'm in Southeast Florida and I'll see a chiropractor advertising out in Central Florida, 4-hour drive away. And he's on my pay-per-click, my geographic area. That tells me he doesn't know what he's doing, or his advertising agency doesn't have a clue. Okay, so that's, and again, we cover these all individually. So for personal injury, would I consider that? Yes. But it's going to be a very specific message. It's going to be highly narrowed down with the target market, like what I just shared with you. And it's definitely going to be the opt-in. And I'll tell you, the number one by far message is how are you compensated for an auto injury? That is the number one message, period. If you're going to do pay-per-click, that's where it's going to be. By the way, our personal injury website is coming out with these funnels, all these personal injury funnels. So again, you'll be introduced to that more if you want to take advantage of that down the road. But that's the importance of the funnel. Same with newspaper. Now, a lot of people are forgetting the newspaper. A lot of newspapers are online, number one. But we're going to pay attention to the local newspaper, number one. If it's not local, I don't care. And then we're going to pay attention to the number of subscribers. That tells you how many people are paying attention. And then we have to use an opt-in. We got to use the opt-in there. Now, sometimes you can do flyers and inserts with newspapers, but they're one-offs. They see it, throw it away, and it's over. See? I'd rather have one person opt in than 10 people see it and throw it away. That opt-in is everything. That follow-up is everything. Everything. Okay, opt-in. So if you have a local newspaper, and it's usually pretty cheap, it's pretty cheap to put an ad in a local newspaper, even though it's low volume and it's not like the highest, most popular thing. It can be really cheap. In other words, what does it mean? For the return on investment. So you could pick up a few patients there that easily, and I'll look at one case average and I'll go, if I average $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a case, and I go, well, I only need one case from that newspaper over a year. So let's say you got a case average of $3,000. I only need one PI case over a year. So would I be willing to do that to see how it works if I only had to spend $3,000 or less and it came out at a high enough frequency, at least once a week or once every 2 weeks? That'd be kind of the minimum frequency that I want. Because remember, frequency is more important than size. Frequency. So if I can be in there every week, same location with the same message, because remember, those people aren't in accidents. But when they are in an accident, now they remember they saw you 100 times. See, that's how advertising works, but only if it's cheap. If it's relative, well, I'm going, well, if I got a case average of 3,000, would I be willing to spend 3,000 to be in a newspaper at least once a week, no more than once every 2 weeks? And I only have to get one new patient to break even. I'm trying it for my area, but it's going to be this criteria. And then, of course, the message has to be correct also. And you definitely want the opt-in. So the advertisement in the newspaper pushes them to the website opt-in. See, that's the only way I'm doing this. Otherwise, no, I'm not doing it. It's all about the follow-up when it comes to the internet. Then you go to the radio, or that's only good for multiple locations. Generally, if you got one location, the radio, probably 80 to 90% of the radio, you're not even in the geographic radius of draw. I had one client doing that. I'm like, well, that was a waste, unless you got a high percentage or high potential return from that small percent. He only was in 15% of that radio's geographic radius of draw. So what it is good for is multiple offices. That's when multiple offices, that's when you do these personal injury multiple offices, that's when things get really exciting. That's when TV, radio, large attorney firms, they want to deal with, with consistency and regularity. They don't want to deal with 20 different people doing 20 different things. They hate that. I'd much rather, and I'm talking about it, even if the documentation was the same. And of course, our documentation beats the hell out of the average chiropractor. So that's the real power when you start going to the second office and then the third office in that county. Then you have real strength. I had 9 offices in my metro area. And the phone call went something like this from my marketing manager, to the large law firms. Ring, ring. This is, Beth, not with so-and-so's offices, doctors, they do personal injury, blah, 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 the small talk. But the bottom line is we'd say, we have 9 offices in the metro area. We see 30,000 patient visits a week. We'd like to have our doctors introduced to your attorneys. The very next question out of their mouth was, when? You tell me when. In other words, I knew we were players. We were big time players. That's how you get in the front door and own and dominate these large personal injury firms. That's who they want to deal with. They don't want to deal with the mom and pop guy. Okay, so radio multiplication, we talked about that. AM, when you do go to radio, multiplications is important. AM station, talk radio, and you segment it, like same thing. You would give your, this increases the probability. You would give your radio station the best patients for your target market, like the email, same thing. And they would reverse engineer and plug them in and go, okay, we want all the metrics for that for our advertising. If you're not aware of it, when you sign up for things like Facebook and TikTok and all that stuff, Facebook calculates over 40,000 metrics with you and your email. 40,000. They know everything. They know what you buy, when you buy, how you buy, where you buy. They know everything. That's why it's gold. They know way, way more than what you think they do, which is great for advertising. For advertising, you really can narrow it down and save a lot of money and increase the return on investment and effectiveness. That's how you do it. Okay, same with TV, multiple locations. Do you have multiple locations? Niche channel with it, and then you always want to be able to send them to an opt-in. What's the opt-in? The opt-in does 2 things. It captures them for follow-up, and then it continues the educational sales process. That's the power of the opt-in. You'll get way more business with opt-ins than if you just send them to your homepage. Don't just send them to a homepage. Don't do that. Okay, let's go into this category here. This is the internet. So I've taken the internet and I've made it its own category because it is its own category right now. And then I'm going to get into the absolute best marketing, most effective, least expensive there is. So let's go into the 4th category, which is the internet advertising. There's essentially 3 categories on the internet. There's pay-per-click, there's Google for Business, local maps, and there's the organic section. That's essentially what you're looking at when you go to the internet, okay? Now, I'm going to share with you a couple of these things. Let me cover it. Number 1 is a podcast. I'm actually going to be doing a podcast. Now, not many people are going to want to do a podcast, okay? And the reason I'm doing it is I'm actually going to be interviewing attorneys, personal injury attorneys. I'm going to be doing it for marketing purposes. Everybody likes to be interviewed. Everybody likes to be seen as an authority. And I'm helping them market. And it's a medical legal podcast. That's what it is. It's a medical legal podcast. I'm interviewing the attorney, and we actually talk about the common medical legal problem. I'm giving you a very general overview. So, but podcasts rank really well for SEO, search engine optimization. And they do real well because it's called long form. And long form marketing always is better than short form. A short 30-second snippet versus a long form where you can actually go into multiple topics and multiple questions and multiple obstacles and multiple solutions. Long form. That's what that is, long form. So again, if I was in an office, only in my office, I'd still consider it because it's powerful for the attorneys, and the attorneys can use the recording. I video record it with the attorney. I go to their location in their boardroom video. Okay. So we're talking about a higher end of marketing here. Okay. But if you really want to step it up and kick it, and then I let them use the podcast. So they're on my website. They take it, it's SEO'd organically, and they can use it for their pay-per-click also. See? Okay. Most people aren't going to fool with that. That takes a lot more knowledge and skill to do that, and willingness. Okay. But you're right in where the honey's at. You will become that attorney's authority. You will become their authority, period. And of course, that's why I'm doing it. I want to be his authority. Of course, that's what the attorney educational sales presentation is about. It's about them seeing they're losing and they need you. You're the authority for them to stop losing. That's what that's about. Okay, so you might, and again, I go into detail, all the detail, how to do this separately. So if you're looking at really driving your office and going into multiple offices, or you have, the multiple PI offices like we do, you want to strongly consider the podcast arena. Live stream lunch and learns. This is huge. I just did a live stream personal injury attorney. I do it all the time. I did live stream personal injury attorney presentations all the time on Zoom. You've got to get familiar with Zoom. And one of the things that happens is patients may come in with a client, which is the easiest attorney to convert. And remember, you got to get to that. You got to do a presentation as fast as you can to create authority, or you're just going to get treated like, they treat all the other Tom, Dick, and Harry chiropractors like trash and cut your bill. Okay. So you have got to. Well, more and more, it's Zoom. So you've got to learn how to do a presentation on Zoom. Well, what does that mean? It just means you really just learn how to push a button. It's called start. You got to know the basics of a camera, right? Basics of lighting, background, all real simple stuff we teach. And I'll do a webinar on that also. But this is a great way to leverage time. See, I'm doing this now where you can leverage it, but now we're doing the paralegal lunch and learns. It's not going to be, I'm not going to go to one office. I want more authority than that. I want 2 and then 3 and then 4. I want it all to be live streamed where I'm influencing many legal offices simultaneously. Same with lunch and learn. But you also need to know how to do Zoom, how to do a one-on-one presentation. So if the attorney's not in the area, say they're in another city, 100, 300 miles away, you've got to learn how to get on Zoom and do that presentation and flip it and change the dynamics of that relationship fast. So we actually also use it for being proactive. Now that's reactive. You don't want to be reactive. Or it's great when you want to update the attorney and do a quick review of the case. Man, it's great to get on Zoom because remember, 55% of communication is visual. And you're seen as authority. I'd rather them see me than hear me. And I'd rather them hear me than read me. That's the rule. So seeing beats everything. Live stream is huge now. You just got to know to get on it. And it's cheap. I think it's like $15 a month for meetings. You don't even do webinars, just do meetings. So it's cheap, it's easy, and most people are really familiar with it coming out of COVID. So, we're getting ready to do multiple live stream, just, lunch and learns once a month with paralegals and attorneys, live stream, are doing sales presentations if they're too far away, are doing follow-ups on a particular case. That should be a normal part of your marketing now. You've got, and again, I'll do a webinar on that specifically, but it's literally as simple as just pushing a button. Okay. Google pay-per-click, opt-in, same thing. We talked about this before. you know, the importance of narrowing the keywords, limiting the keywords, having the opt-in with the educational sales. You definitely want to do that. Same with the billboard. We talked about that. We talked about the Yelp advertising, Facebook. Now, one of the things you definitely want to consider, and this is huge now, the internet is just, it's big and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you have got to learn to get more and more on engaged and involved with it. You're getting left behind. And one of them is the social media factor. And you go, well, social media, you go, what the hell is that? You know, people kind of have hard times defining it as a, but here's the bottom line is all of these places, like here's the common social media sites right there. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok. Those are the most common ones. You should have an account. Your office should have an account on every one of those. And all of these videos that we talk about, they should all be being uploaded to all of these accounts. Now, there's something called a syndicator, a social media syndicator. And what it does is you buy this syndicate, and some are pretty cheap. Some are only like $15, $20 a month. Some are more expensive, like $100, $150 a month, okay? But what happens is it creates a spider web effect. It creates a huge presence on the internet. And remember, when you do it right, and I talk about this when I cover SEO, search engine optimization, keywords, and citations, NAP, name, address, and phone number. Cover this separately. When you do this and you post it right, I'm not even talking about the message yet. When you post it for SEO principles, you significantly expand your reach through your citation, your NAP, and your SEO. Huge, creates a huge influence. So, and it's great with videos, and you also have a syndicator for a blog. And that's a whole nother story because Google likes fresh, relevant content. That's why I said there should be one blog going out a month. And again, we cover this in separate webinars, how to simply do this. As a matter of fact, most of this is taught to the chiropractic assistant, most of it, unless the doctor needs to be in the video or something like that, okay? But even if the doctor doesn't want to be in, you can still do all this and have somebody else trained how to do it. But you've got to know the basics. So you learn the SEO, you learn about the citations and the NAP, and then it goes to all these sites. And if you use a syndicator, it creates this massive influence. And especially when you do a blog, Google likes fresh, relevant content. That's what gets pushed up to the top. So that significantly helps your website individually and what's called backlinks. These are major players on the internet, and I cover it when I cover the internet marketing. These are major components of the internet, and you just need to be familiar with them. And again, we just do them in-house. They're real easy once you learn the basics, you know, and we typically have a CA, our marketing CA, that does it. And we'll typically pay them an extra amount of money to basically run the social media. But we'll have the social media syndicator for videos and the social media syndicator for the blog. So all she's got to do is know how to put it together and upload it to the software, and bam, it goes everywhere with the right keywords, the right citation, the right NAP, all that stuff. This is what takes all of your other content and pushes it up. This is how it all connects. It's not individual. It's not like one video. No, that one video, if it's done right with SEO and citation, and then you add 2 and then 3 and then 4, it pushes, all of it is synergistic to increase your signal. What does that mean? It means when people are Googling your stuff, your words, your keywords, and your stuff shows up, your video, your website, and in multiple spots. In other words, you get the business, okay? Okay. Now, it's not proactive. I mean, you don't know how much it's going to work. I can't quantify that, right? but it's a significant dynamic. You know, you cannot overlook the very basics of having a social media campaign. I'm talking about very simple basics, very simple 30-second videos, SEO'd, citation properly, with the right message, problem solution, gateway problem solution offer message. That's simple. Okay, so these are things you want to look at and consider for your marketing calendar. And then, of course, the biggest one that works the best is the introduction sales. That definitely takes the most knowledge and skill. Costs the least amount of money, works the best, gets the most. That's what creates way more business than you'll physically be able to handle. You probably won't get that from any other advertising. So now the spouse referral program, that's not a personal injury program. That's for my consulting clients. Kids Day, that's my consulting clients. Proactive referrals, that's my consulting clients. Monthly in-office promotion, that's my consulting clients. Notice these are just how to get chiropractic new patients, not personal injury patients. Reactivation, that's just chiropractic new patient orientation, that's chiropractic new patient. VIP dinner, chiropractic new patient orientation, same thing. Then we come down to the personal injury attorney presentations. And there's multiple ways of looking at this. Now, that's what takes knowledge and skill. I just had one client, he gave 2 presentations. The very first presentation, he's got 10 referrals a month. 10, and he asked her to be her expert witness. It was the first presentation she'd ever done. She just did another presentation 2 days ago. Got another 5 cases a month from her area. The attorney has more, but they're in other areas. And he asked her the same thing, to be their independent medical doctor examiner expert witness. She just locked up 15 referrals a month, because these are recurring from 2 presentations. 15. If you have a case average of $5,000, 5,000 times 10 is 50, plus another 25 is 75. That's $75,000 a month. In 2 presentations, she just created $1 million in personal injury referrals. 2, and it took an hour. But what did it really take? Come back. How much cost was involved? There was no cost involved. She picked up the phone and did the marketing campaign. How much labor was involved? Well, there was no other labor involved. It was just her. Time involved. Yeah, she had to learn it. She spent 3 months of intense learning. She had to learn how to make $1 million a year. Yes, that does not come easy. You are not going to learn that from a weekend seminar. And a lot of people won't have the ability to do it. Did it take skill for her to do that? Yeah, she had to follow. I mean, she had to learn how to do that. What kind of return on investment? That was unbelievable. That was $1 million, and she didn't spend anything on the actually marketing campaign. 0. It was a phone call, a video, a follow-up presentation. That was it. But what did it take? It took a tremendous amount of knowledge. It took a tremendous amount of skill. It took a tremendous amount of willingness. She couldn't be afraid to talk to the attorney. Remember, a lot of people, a lot of doctors, afraid to talk to attorneys. She wasn't afraid. Boom, just like that, $1 million. And those were in 2 weeks. She did those presentations within 10 days of each other. So where does it fit? It's off the chart. There's nothing in chiropractic that beats when it comes to return on investment and massive income than the personal injury attorney presentation. There's nothing. We're not talking about pay-per-click and increasing your business 10 or 20, $30,000. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about hundreds of $1,000s, quarter of 250,000, $500,000, $1 million. We're talking about huge leaps in money. Remember, and it's repetitive. She doesn't have to go sell them again. She just has to maintain the relationship. Advertising, you got to spend all that money, and you got to do it again. And there's no way she would have had the money to get 15 new patients, 15 PI patients a month, what that would have cost in money. And then she'd have to spend it all over again the next month. That would cost way too much money to do that. But it didn't with skill and knowledge. So that's huge. Now, what I recommend is every Friday I designated for the attorney presentation. I was either following up with an attorney, reinforcing the relationship, or doing an educational sales presentation. Somewhere the marketing campaign was being run, and every Friday that was happening. That's what I use Fridays for. Monthly courthouse and restaurant with CLE, another good option, is, again, this takes knowledge and skill, is to do a presentation down at one of the local restaurants out at the courthouse. Remember, they're all down at the courthouse. That's why their offices are typically around the courthouse. They're constantly in and out dealing with the court. And if you pick a restaurant that has a side room, and once a month you do the same location, same time, they get 1 credit hour of continuing education and a free lunch. And it's marketed to your list. And you're down there every time. Boom. I have one client who did this. In 1 year, he got 354 personal injury referrals. 354. Just from that alone. What does it take? It takes knowledge. It takes skill. It takes willingness. It takes motivation. It doesn't take money. I mean, the cost of continuing education, maybe $40, something like that. So then you're only paying for the lunch. But how many lunches would I pay for to have an hour of an attorney's ear? How many $20 lunches would I pay for? Stack them up, especially when it's the sales presentation. The huge effectiveness of the sales presentation. Stack them up, line them up. I can't buy enough lunches. How fast I want to go through this. Quarterly dinner, and we do that right now. We typically do a dinner with a group. Remember, it's harder in a group. It's a little harder because it's harder to personalize. You got to learn how to control crowd. And then once it gets past 7, so one-on-one, it's the easiest to personalize. It's the most effective. Then when you go past that, up to 7, once you go past 7, now it gets unruly. Now you not only have to know personal injury, you've got to know how to talk and manage a crowd. That's a whole nother animal. I had one client that didn't do that. He didn't know how to manage a crowd. He walked in and there were 4 attorneys and they totally took control. He never even got through the presentation. And then they just patted him on his ass and said, "Go away, little boy." And it had nothing to do with personal injury. He didn't know how to control 4 people that were strong. He didn't have the presentation skills. See? So it's not just one thing, depending on what you're doing. Quarterly dinner with CLE. So these are some of it. And then I always say do an annual seminar. But the one-on-ones are slam dunks. They're the easiest. They're the slam dunks. They're the personalization. They're the highest effectiveness. They're the slam dunks. And then if you wanted to do the monthly courthouse thing with restaurant, that works well. And then the quarterly, if you want to do a group and try to do more of a group. Again, that's if you're dealing with multiple offices. If you don't have multiple offices, I'd just stick with the one-on-one. That's it. As soon as you start going up the multiple offices, now you need to start considering these other factors to help fill up your offices. Okay, so that's the personal injury attorney presentation. And you already know you have to shift their consciousness from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. That's the highest dollar amount you can. I mean, where else can you spend 2 hours in a presentation and create $1 million in referrals? And in this industry, you can't. And so I say there's nothing, absolutely nothing compares to it, not even close, period. That's why, that's why I put so much attention to it, because the upside is so unbelievable. And remember, how much does it really take to increase the quality of your life? The quality of your life will change if you increase your income $100,000 a year. That'll change the house you live in and the neighborhood you live and your vacation. That alone will. So we're talking about serious money, not $100,000 or $200,000 a year. And then next one is medical doctor presentations. And by the way, what's the good and bad about all this? It's a forced market. They have to have providers. They have to. That's what's great about it. And remember, more patients will go to the attorney than to the chiropractor. Remember, 8% of patients will go to the chiropractor, of chiropractic patients. 32% of personal injury patients. Why is that? Because the attorneys are referring in because they need a provider to create the medical bills for the case and the documentation. And it's even better than that. Only 32% are going to chiropractors, but 87% of them have a soft tissue injury. There's still 2/3 of the patients who have chiropractic problems who are not even going to chiropractors that are personal injury cases. And 75% of the attorneys don't even use chiropractors. Advertising won't get that though, because they're not looking for you. You're back to educational sales. That takes knowledge and skill, not money. So when you go to the medical doctors, what's the bad news? The good news is there's more personal injury cases going to local medical doctors than to attorneys. There's a bigger, what's the bad news? It's not a forced market. They don't have to send them anywhere. And it's a total different message. And it has to be educational sales. It can't be advertising and publicity. They don't have a perceived need to send them to a chiropractor. If anything, they got a lot of weird ideas about chiropractors. They've heard and seen a lot of weird stuff. And I can't blame them. I've seen a lot of weird stuff. I get antsy when my friends say, hey, do you know of a chiropractor to go to? I'm like, oh, shit. I don't want this to come back and bite me. What kind of weird person are they going to head into here? So medical doctor presentations is all based on science. This is where the 3 phases of healing rocks. The medical profession loves it. Now, some of the big ones are the urgent care centers. That's where a lot of these patients go. They're in auto accidents. And what do? They just give them pain medication and send them on their way. So that totally can be shifted. The local general practitioner. They'll go to the general practitioner before they go to the attorney. Neurosurgeons are good. They work with chiropractors real well. They get a lot of chiropractic referrals for discs. Generally speaking, neurosurgeons are very good, way better than orthopedists. Neurosurgeons. You have to know educational sales, and it's based on the science of the 3 phases of healing. Well, we teach that separately. Once again, how much does that cost? Nothing. How much time does it take? Well, it doesn't take much time to do the marketing, but it does take time to learn it. It takes a lot of knowledge and skill. See, that's the big dichotomy in this marketing thing. You're talking about a lot of business that doesn't cost much. That's good business, but it takes a lot of knowledge and skill. Or the opposite. Doesn't take much knowledge or skill, costs a lot of money, doesn't work very well, and it's the worst kind of patient. That's kind of how marketing works. And then there's everything in between that's leading in one of those directions. You've got to decide, who are you going to be? We already know the marketing that works. It's whether or not you're going to do it or not, period. And that's what it's going to be dependent on. Are you afraid to talk to attorneys? Well, you're never going to do presentations. Are you afraid to present stuff to medical doctors? That won't work either for you, see? And there's a lot of doctors that are like that. Then you got to go to the second best thing. That's reality. Pain management doctors are a potential good source, and especially emergency care. The emergency care doctors. I would be targeting the emergency care. I remember I went down to the local emergency room and did a presentation to the local emergency room doctors. They'd never even heard of spinal biomechanics. They didn't know anything about it. They didn't know the 3 phases of healing, the complicating factors, altered pathological spinal biomechanics. They knew nothing. I was the absolute authority for them. That's not what they do. They're in business just to make sure people are breathing They got their airways open. Their blood is circulating. That's the only thing they care about. ABCs, air, breathing, and circulation. That's all they care about. And then get them out of there and then send them to wherever. So those are real good. Urgent care centers are dealing with flus and infections. So those are really good marketing sources. But again, it's educational sales, but it's a total different message than the attorneys. Total different. And we cover that. And it's skill. Again, you're dealing with knowledge and skill, not money. It costs very little to nothing to create these referrals. And then you go to the testimonial videos. It's always good to have testimonial videos, just all the personal injury testimonial videos. You should be creating testimonial videos with car accident under all of those keywords that are SEO'd: car accident injury, car injury doctor, car injury chiropractor, location, all those keywords. And again, we teach how to do this separately. So this is all simple stuff once you know how to do it. You know, the hardest stuff that I talked about up to this point was the personal injury attorney educational sales, but that's what creates millions of dollars. So of course it's going to be more difficult. Okay, so SEO and YouTube. So, you know, we talked about how, remember, YouTube is the second highest search engine. For you not to have solution videos is just wrong for your gateways. And especially if you're in personal injury, you should have all of those keywords. When somebody Googles those keywords, you should be there. And that's through SEOing videos. And then we talk about what message. We talk, you know, we cover how to do all of this. Does it cost? No. A little bit of labor, little more time in the beginning. And then that's it. Once they're done, they're there forever. And then, of course, you want to syndicate them. Not only do them for a one-off, now dump them into the syndicator that throws them to all these other social media sites, put it into your blog, put it into your blog syndicator, and they're all SEO'd with the citation and the NAP, name, address, phone number, and you create this massive internet influence for your keywords. That's how it all comes together. So SEO, YouTube, website, blog, we talked about that. And anytime you shoot a video, this should be the routine. It should always go to the social media syndicator and to your blog syndicator and your past patients. And these are the typical social media sites: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, Pinterest, TikTok. You should have YouTube. You should have your business should have accounts in every one of those. And every time you do something, it should be SEO'd and uploaded. And it's easier if you use a syndicator. If you're not going to, then your staff member can do it individually. And then you learn how to do a syndicator, and then it actually does some of this for you. It does multiple for you. So that's what social media syndicators is: a strategy of sharing content across multiple platforms to increase visibility and engagement. I'll go into how to avoid negative SEO aspects of a syndication. Here's some typical syndication sites. Hootsuite. Hootsuite's kind of expensive. Sendable, Medium, HubSpot, Outbrain. I'm gonna pick a social media syndicate out of all of these, and I'm gonna recommend one to you. I'm not gonna do that right now, but I'll recommend it to you. And then the syndicator for the blog site is called OnlyWire. And that's another 20 other additional sites. So when you post the blog, and again, I show how to do all of this. All of this is very easy. Matter of fact, we train the staff member how to do this. The only thing the staff member can't do is be the doctor in the video. That's the only thing the staff member can't do. And we want the doctor in the video. We need the doctor in the video. Everything else, they're trained to do, period. Give them an extra fee for being the social media manager. And these are systems. These are systems. They go out regularly, consistently. It's all trained in. It's a system, okay? It has to be. You have to have an internet marketing system. It's too big. It's too big, and it's only getting bigger. So these are the marketing systems These are the personal injury. Now, I covered all the different marketing systems for patients, but that's for my consulting clients. I specifically covered the personal injury marketing systems. And then you have to pick and choose. What are you going to do? Okay. And so as a bare minimum, what I always recommend is at least go to where patients are looking. Talk to your patients should always be getting a message from you, personal injury gateway related message, period. You should have all your insurance videos out there that are SEO, period. You should have your condition videos out there that are SEO'd and citation, period. And then your office sign that's specialized for personal injury. 4 of those, in other words, 4 out of those 5 are personal injury specific. And then you go, okay, well, out of these other systems, which one would I want to include? Those are the 5 you definitely should be doing. And then you go, do I want to do what introduction educational sales system? Well, the personal injury attorney presentation is the gold. I mean, if you at least did that, and then if you combine the general practitioner educational sales, like the urgent care centers and the emergency room doctors, and then added the personal injury attorney to that alone, is gold. You don't have to do anything past that. Just do it right, learn it again. But what's it take? It takes knowledge. It takes skill. It takes some confrontation. It takes a little motivation. It takes willingness. You actually have to know something to increase your business $500,000, $1 million a year. And it's not going to be a weekend seminar. So those are the ones I would be definitely paying attention to. And then these other ones are, if you wanted to. And then I told you the one you definitely want to do is the personal injury keywords for Google pay-per-click with the billboard. That's like bare minimum 101 personal injury marketing calendar, period. And that's it. And we just had another, and this happens all the time. I can't remember in the last 4 or 5 years talking to a group of attorneys and not increasing the referrals over $1 million. I can't remember it. We win them left and right. That presentation is fantastic when you do it right and you follow it up right and you actually know it. It makes a huge difference in your income, your livelihood, the security for your family. That's what we're talking about. This is not about chiropractic. The end game is creating security for your family and freedom for yourself. That's what this is about. That's what you need to have in the forefront of your head when you're thinking of that. What are you doing for your daughter? What are you doing for your son? What are you doing for your wife to create freedom, stability, and security? That's what all this leads to. That's why we're doing it. All right, let me leave it like that. But those are the recommendations. That's the personal injury calendar. And bottom line, it gets back to skill and knowledge that doesn't cost much time, energy, or money, that has tremendous impact and return on investment. And then the opposite other side of that, if you don't have any skill or knowledge, you're stuck with paying a lot of money for bad patients, low quality patients, and then you got to do it again next month. And then there's the in-between. That's the sliding scale of marketing. You've got to pick which one are you going to do. And you got to look in the mirror and go, do I really have the ability to talk to an attorney? Do I really have the ability to introduce myself and do a mini presentation to a medical doctor? See, a lot of people don't. They think they do, but they don't. And then some people have the ability, but they don't know it because they're not willing to test it. So again, this is all personality driven. This is based on your knowledge and skill. This is not industry wide. There's only 8% of the population looking for chiropractors. That's a real small number to bet on and not have any knowledge or skill. I would not want to be involved in that profession if I couldn't control more than that 8%. I would want nothing to do with that profession. Fortunately, 3 out of 4 people that don't go to a chiropractor have a chiropractic problem. And the majority of personal injury patients that have chiropractic gateway problems don't go to chiropractors. And that's where the real goal is. And that's why advertising doesn't work very well, because it's a very small percentage of people that are actually looking. That's why. You've got to make those choices. They're serious choices. And then you put them on the calendar. Go, I'm going to do these 3 systems. I'm going to do these 4 systems. And we're going to train. That's what we're going to do. We're going to train. We're going to put it down and we're going to train. And we're going to install them. It's going to be a system, a place, a person, a responsibility, training, skill, knowledge, when, where, how. And then it's going to be tracked. And then we're going to measure the results. And based on those results, we're going to, okay, how much more do we need to know or modify as we go along? That's what creates $1 million businesses. Not having a calendar and letting any Tom, Dick, or Harry pull you in one direction and then the next direction and then the next direction. You need to know all of these systems, how they work, what makes them more effective and less effective, and then make an educated choice of which one are you going to do. Are you going to be involved more with skill and knowledge, or spending money, or somewhere in between? And then put it in place and go. That's how you create way more business than you physically can handle. But what you don't do is not do a marketing calendar, not have a system, and don't do training, and then just do any Tom, Dick, or Harry. And you know what I'm talking about if you're a chiropractor. Too many times chiropractors, their buddy in another state will go, oh, I tried this. I'm doing this. Next thing to know, the chiropractor's doing a jack leg over here. And this has nothing to do with what he's trying to do or the system he's trying to go or the direction he's trying to go. In other words, he's going in every damn direction, but no direction. That's 90% of the chiropractors, in my opinion. So get your marketing calendar. Pick what you're going to do. Train it in. Either train it in with me, my seminars, webinars, video. Train it in. Make it a system, accountable, and reproduce it. And that's how I did 77 offices in 20 states, over $80 million a year. It was from systems, and I only had 7 systems. 7. That was it, to do $80 million a year.